Dorthe, welcome. Thank you for doing this again.
Thank you, Brendan. Thank you for having been invited.
No, you're welcome. And just for the listeners, we had a great conversation about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I managed to stuff up the recording. So you've been very kind to to give your time to allow me to do it again. And I'm very excited to talk to you, Dorthe. I mean, I had a guy called Pat Moran on a few weeks ago, who's a partner in PricewaterhouseCoopers in Dublin. And I know I've said this to you before because I said it the last time. But there's been a couple of people who made a very strong impression on me in my early career. One was Pat, but the second one was yourself, and for very similar reasons. You know, you've always been incredibly generous and supportive with your time, incredibly positive, and always treating everyone around you in a very open and genuine way at all levels. And you're very, very well respected and liked by your peers and everyone who's worked with you. So delighted to have you on, and I'm looking forward to the next hour or so.
Thank you, Brendan.
No worries. Now, you're the Chief Audit Executive at Danske Bank. So what I thought we might start off with is, what is a Chief Audit Executive?
Yes. So a Chief Audit Executive is the head of internal audit, and in my case, in Danske Bank. And I'm responsible for a team of a little bit more than 100 people for auditing the Danske Bank activities. And Danske Bank is not only a bank, it's also within the group, there's a pension company and a mortgage company, and even more of those. So it's quite, broad, so to speak. We're a team, as I said, of more than 100 people. We are located in 7 different countries, but we work as one team. And our reporting line goes to the board directors. So we agree with the board directors what we should focus on. And then we go and do the agreed audit activities. And then we'll report back to the board directors on the outcome.
Yeah. And a lot of listeners, Dorthe, won't be fully aware of what internal audit does as well. So maybe if we talk a little bit about, the role of internal audit.
Yes, absolutely. So very high level, internal audit is an independent function in the company. And when you are truly independent, you also, as I said, report to the board directors. And what we do is that we help the board directors and actually also the executive committee members on checking up on whether policies are implemented appropriately across the group, whether procedures are being followed, whether the procedures are actually okay or whether they need to be redesigned, and whether controls are being performed as you would expect them to be performed. And then, depending on the outcome, we report back saying, yes, everything is working as you would expect it to be. Or if that's not the case, we'll report back saying, well, there are some weaknesses here, and here are some suggestions on how those can be remediated.
Yeah, and you've had many roles over the years within internal audit, Dorthe. So for people that are thinking of entering into a career in internal audit, what qualities, and maybe we'll talk about entry level first of all, what qualities and skills would you look for in somebody entering into a role in internal audit?
Yeah, so many different kinds of competences and skills, I would say. So I normally split skills into 2 categories. So that would be the technical skills. And if I look at my own team, our technical skills will, basically, obviously, we have to have experts in how we do auditing. So those skills we definitely need to have. But we also need to have people who is very skilled within IT technology to understand the IT risks. We need, obviously, since we're a bank, people who have a deep understanding on the credit risk, because this is what a bank do. And we need to have people who are very capable of understanding the compliance risks, because when you work in the financial institution like a bank, there are a number of regulations that we need to live up to, and it is important, obviously, that we understand the risks that are related to that, mean that we need to have the competences in there. So, but also we have, I think recently we hired a person who had a master's degree within innovation, which, is about, development and understand how to develop different things in the best possible way. And obviously we also need to audit how a bank's development processes are doing. So those are the technical skills. As important are the soft skills, because in a function as ours, when we go and audit whether areas and people are doing as we would expect them to do, we need to be able to communicate with those people in a very good way. And we need to have the ability to influence and be persuading. It might be that people we meet not always understand what is required in order to, adhere to a policy or regulation. So we need to understand how to explain that to them in a way that they both understand it, but also accept that they've got something that they need to fix. And that is both in terms of our writing skills. So we write audit reports, but also verbally when we meet people, when we approach people, that we do that in the right way. So soft skills are extremely important in my mind. And then probably also part of the soft skills is that we need to understand how to meet people at all levels throughout the organization. So we meet people who just joined the organization, but we also meet the chairman of the board of directors and all of those in between. And obviously, it takes different approaches and different levels of details in how you communicate depending on who you speak to.
Yeah, great insights there. And I mean, Dorthe, you've obviously reached the very top of your profession. And if I take it back, and maybe we could just walk through your career a little bit before maybe diving in again to the internal audit a bit more. But if we can take it back to even to university days, what did you do? What course did you pursue, degree did you pursue in university?
Yeah, so I've got a master's degree in economics and auditing. And in Denmark, where I'm located, that is a prerequisite to be a state authorized public accountant. So having a master's degree, you go out, you get a job. In my case, I got a job at KPMG. And after a number of years with further on-the-job training, but also further theoretical training sessions, I went to another exam and then became state authorized public accountant. So that's my theoretic background.
And you said there you joined KPMG, which is obviously one of the big four accountancy firms that young people usually go into to train to be an accountant worldwide. But you also spent quite a long period of your career within the big four firms in general. What was that experience like, and what kept you in the big four for that period of time?
Yeah. So in total, I spent probably 20 years with the big four, or some of those. And I spent the first 12, 13 years with KPMG. And at a point of time, after 12 years probably, I was approached by Arthur Andersen, who existed at that point of time in 2001. And they wanted to rebuild a department, a function in their company who should focus on auditing IT, security, IT controls, and audit also processes. And that was what I had specialized in when I was at KPMG. And at that point of time, I was very keen on taking on a role as being a leader and having the opportunity to set something up completely new and to develop from that platform. So I joined Arthur Andersen. It was a short marriage with Arthur Andersen because 3 months later something named Enron came up from the US, and Arthur Andersen was split up across the whole world, and in Denmark we were merged with Deloitte. So I spent another I think 3 years with Deloitte, 3-4 years, and then I went to PricewaterhouseCoopers because probably the culture there was a little bit more like what I was looking for. And I spent 5 very good years with PricewaterhouseCoopers. It was at the time where Sarbanes-Oxley developed their control framework set up and all the requirements that followed with that. And I pretty much spent my time during those 5 years focusing on, either being advisor for companies on how they should implement Sarbanes-Oxley requirements, or audit, on the other hand, on other companies if they actually had done as they were supposed to do. And then, after having spent 20 years there, I thought, I was missing something. I was missing the opportunity to really focus on leading people and developing people, but also being more close to the companies that I was working for. Because I felt like, when you audit as an auditor or work as a consultant, you move from one job to another. And when you're out of the door, you might not necessarily know, what happens next. And I was missing that part. So so that was the reason why I was looking for another opportunity. And I got that opportunity at an insurance company named RSA, which was it was a UK-based company with businesses in Scandinavia and throughout the world. And I became the head of internal audit of the Scandinavian business, and also responsible for the audit functions in Canada, Italy, and Ireland. And that was, something really different compared to what I've been used to before, because it was very much about developing people, supporting people, being a leader, actually.
Yeah. And of course, it was at that point that I met you when you were in that role at RSA. Yeah. But just before we get into that change, and I do want to delve into that a little bit more, what did you enjoy most about professional services? Because obviously you spent 20 years in that. What was it that you enjoyed the most about that career?
Yeah. So I enjoyed very much to, being in an environment where you learn something new every single day you go to work, and being together with people where there would always be somebody who is more clever than yourselves, have got some insights that you can go and get, and that you're kind of forced to be on top of development. That I really enjoyed. I think that is a huge strength when you work in the professional services in that way, and I think that's still the case, actually, because it's easy to be kept updated because there is an organization who is supporting you on that, so it just happens.
Yeah. And the other thing I wanted to touch on, because you mentioned it now, you wanted to lead people and develop people, and that was part of the reason for the change. To be, and I guess this is a general question, but an important one as well. What is it to be a good leader, Dorthe? What does it take?
Yeah, it's a good question. So perhaps one should ask the employees instead, because it's, when you look at a person and you would think about, okay, is that a person that I want to follow? Is that a person that I think I can learn from, in terms of, you might not learn technical skills for, but perhaps you can learn more of the soft skills. But also a person who can help me develop in different directions depending on what my ambitions are. So, but a few other words, at least what is important for me, is to be transparent, being open about what is going on, and transparent, that means both talking about what is good, but also what is challenging. And a good leader might not always know the answers to everything, but then being able to be transparent on a certain amount of uncertainty, in my view, is also okay, as long as you also tell that this is what we're trying to do in order to reduce the amount of uncertainty that we've got. Yeah. A good leader is also something that someone that you trust, and I think it goes with transparency. So at least that is important to myself. I need to feel trust in the one that I report to in order to feel safe and comfortable. And then the last thing I will mention is I think also a good leader is also willing to show that that person can be vulnerable from time to time. And I think I've learned that, and everybody knows that, because when we get up in the morning, all of us, we probably look ugly, so we need to do something in order to look decent, somewhat decent when we go to work and meet other people. And it doesn't matter who you are, whether you are the president or an auditor. There we are all the same, right? And sometimes something happens which means that we will be vulnerable, and being open about that, I think that's fine. Then that we can be that.
Yeah, and I'd agree with everything you said there. And certainly, as I said at the beginning, I see you as being a great leader, as do many other people who have worked with you. And it is about making people want to follow you, and what makes people want to follow someone. It's kind of walking the walk, but it's also all the behaviors that you demonstrate. And it is about being genuine, about being transparent. The vulnerability that you said is absolutely key as well. I think it makes sense. But when you went into RSA, so that was your first change, so out of professional services into industry. What was the biggest shock, or was there a shock to the system in making that move?
The biggest shock, I don't recall it as being a biggest shock. There were challenges, so I went into an industry where I needed to learn about, technical wise, what is insurance, and then there was some practical stuff. So RSA, as we talked about, with a UK company working in different countries across the piece. And in Scandinavia, where I was located, the working language was English. That was okay. I'm a Dane, so my native language is Danish, obviously. But then we also had a number of Swedish people in the team. So I also needed to adapt to understand the Swedish terminology of insurance matters. So that added a little bit to the complexity when you're very keen to have a speed journey on taking on new insights. It takes a little bit longer due to the languages. But then I think what was just very exciting to me, not a shock, but it was just very exciting, was that with so many people working in so many different countries, in almost all the regions and the continents across the world, you get to learn a number of different cultures, and that just fascinates me to understand and to learn from, and to remember that it is really good to understand the differences in culture in order to understand also why might a person behave in a certain matter, and why is it that two people who on the surface should be doing well together will have challenges because they might come from different backgrounds. So that fascinated me at that point of time, and it still does. I think I'm very curious on that one.
Yeah, me too. I think it is key to get those experiences as well. And I've discussed it on the podcast before. Getting, if you can, and it's available, to get some experiences abroad, whether that's a secondment or you do a permanent move for a while, seeing other cultures, and as you say, seeing how people work, kind of their natural disposition in a culture, will help you a lot when you get into those kind of multinational teams of different people. Yeah. And so RSA, what did you do next? So what was the next move for you?
So the next move was from RSA was after 5 to 6 years, and that was that I moved to Danske Bank. So after having spent 5 years at RSA, I started thinking about what would the next move be? And I was looking to actually stay in Denmark, but thought probably that wasn't, the right job for me here. So I was actually looking towards London, and was prepared to go there also with my family. But then this job that I've got now came up, so I thought, okay, I'll take the opportunity, which I'm very happy that I did.
And you've seen, throughout your career, one question I thought of last night when preparing for our conversation, over your career, if we're just talking about internal audit, there's been a lot of changes, hasn't there? I mean, the function has probably changed. I don't think saying it has changed dramatically is an understatement. Can you talk a little bit about what you've seen, how the department or the function of internal audit in general has changed, and maybe talk a little bit about where you see it going further in the future as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So back in time probably is 20 years or so, many would see internal audit as being a police force. So somebody coming in saying, you're not doing right, you need to do better, here's an action, go and fix it. That then changed into us being more like a service provider, and that was where we started to take on more understanding of the soft skills, because it's much more fun for everybody when we work together in the company, instead of being a police force representative, to being seen as more like a helper. And this is actually, at the end, we've all got the same goal. We want, in my case, the bank to do as good as possible. So that's a common goal that everybody has got. So we work quite hard to be a service provider. And I think that we have succeeded with that quite well across the piece, not only in Danske Bank, but in other organizations as well. And what we are working with now is we still want to be seen as a service provider, obviously, but we also want to be seen as a challenger. And what is a challenger then? So a challenger, in my view, is someone who is technically very capable, sees what is around the corner, what is coming up next. It could be a new trend, it could be a new regulation, it could be that, since we're in Denmark, it could be a trend coming from the UK or from Germany or somewhere else in the world. And we would then challenge the bank whether it is prepared to what is coming up. So that is an ambition to be much more forward-looking than perhaps we're able to be today. And I think in parts of my organization, we're getting there, but it requires a lot. And obviously, even though more than 100 people in a function like ours is quite a lot, it's still quite few in terms of how many deep, technically capable people that we can have within a lot of different disciplines. So we have to balance it a little bit, but there will be areas where we will try to be a challenger. I want to be seen as a challenger.
Yeah. And looking to the future, I mean, just maybe delving into that a little bit, and again, considering maybe, people that are thinking of starting a career in internal audit and looking to the future a little bit. And there's a lot of talk about, data analytics, robotics, and how that's going to evolve, as you say, down over the next number of years. Have you any advice to people that want to enter the function in terms of how they can prepare for that? I mean, we talked about, degree choices. How important is what you choose to do in university going to impact your career choice in internal audit? Is there something maybe you should start focusing on now in preparation for that sort of career?
So I think a lot of different degrees could help you to get internal audit function. There's not only one way. The important thing is that you do get a degree, because having a degree also means that you're able to take on board a way of working, take on board new information, new stuff, and you learn to learn to quickly understand how a certain matter works. So I wouldn't say a specific master's degree would be more important over another one. But I would say that you mentioned data analytics and that kind of stuff. That will be extremely important for all of us to take on board. We might not need all of us to be experts in how to do that, but we need to understand the basics. I also used to say that, and I still say that when we audit a process today, part of that process, it means that we will follow a process from end to end to understand how does it look like, and then we will test certain controls along the way. If it's a manual process, and some of the processes still are, then it's, it comes natural to us. We understand what to do. But in the future, and the future is actually now, we need to have people in our teams who also understand how to audit that process when it's not manual, but actually automated. Because everything that can be made automated will be automated. And it's coming very fast. So everyone who joins our team today needs to have that mindset. You need to have a mindset of being, yes, if I'm not already capable on data analytics, if I'm not already capable on audited, automated processes, I definitely will promise that this is something that I will understand at the job training.
Yeah, great insight there. And another question that I've been getting myself over the past 18 months or so from people is, and how easy is it to, pivot your career in, let's say, your 30s, 40s, to join internal audit at that point? So, what should I prepare to do now? What will people look for if I want to get into the audit function from another department, be it in a bank or an insurance company or any industry, really? Have you any advice or any thoughts on that side of it?
Yeah. So this is happening also within us. So we do hire people from the bank who is working in a business, and also from outside the bank who might not necessarily come from an audit function, but will have some technical insight from other jobs in other companies. So what is then important if you haven't audited before? Obviously, you need to be willing to learn how to audit and that discipline. And with that goes also an obligation to actually, you need to document what you're doing. So if you're not a type of person who is keen on documenting what you're doing, perhaps this is not the right place for you. We're looking for a person who is very collaborative, have that mindset, collaborative with other people in our function, but also having that mindset towards our audit customers. We're looking for people who are pragmatic. So what do I mean by that? I mean that it might be that you as an auditor are right, but at the end, it can be difficult for you to actually end up by winning the discussion if you don't demonstrate a little bit of pragmatism, and if you don't really understand the whole risk picture in the right way. So that is also really important. And then generally your interpersonal skills are really important, because the best technical guy or girl might not be the best fit for us if that person is not able to communicate in a good way with our customers, because then it will end up in discussions which are not fruitful.
Absolutely. And to reverse it, Dorthe, then, so for people that want to move out of internal audit, so let's say they've spent a few years in the function, what benefit do you think the internal audit department will bring to their careers for having spent, a year or 2 or 5 years in the department before moving into another function in their company? Yeah.
So that also happens in our company. So we will have people that moves into different other functions in the bank. So when you have worked in an internal audit function for a number of years, you have got insights into how does good governance look like. what does a risk mean? How do you identify risks? How do you assess whether this is a risk that you want to accept or whether it's something that you need to do something about? What is a control? Why do you need to understand what is a control? What can you use a control for? And what is a key control? What is really important to have in place? So that basic understanding that you can take into the businesses, and the businesses need to understand, how does good governance look like? How do I, manage my business in the best possible way to avoid the risks that I definitely do not want to take? On the other hand, there's lots of risks running a business that you want to take, because this is how you do business, right? But there will be risks that you don't want to take, and then you need to understand how to manage those. And this is what you learn in internal audit. You also learn to communicate. You learn both, as I said, verbally and in writing, if you need to do a report somewhere. So you learn that. And you learn a lot about working with other functions and other people, which, everybody needs to work with other people in different functions. So lots of learnings. I'm a big advocate actually for having a career path in a company where the business would say, if you want to have a career in our company, you need to spend, 6, 12, 18 months, either in internal audit or in compliance or risk function, to understand this, as those areas and to gain the benefits. Because I strongly believe that if you want to be a really good leader, you need to have some level of understanding of those.
Yeah. When I hear you speaking about internal audit, Dorthe, and not just today, but over the years, it's clear you have a passion for what you do. And I wonder, could you talk a little bit about what do you, and this is a question I get as well recently, what do you love most about what you do? But equally importantly, is there anything, that you could say, well, I could do without that aspect of a career in internal audit? So that maybe the good and the bad.
Yeah. So the good thing, many good things. So one good thing is that I really love working with other people, and this is not a one person army. It's lots of people that need to work together. So that is really important. And then I'm driven by trying to do something better today than I did yesterday, and trying to also help, in this case, the bank doing better tomorrow than what was the case today. So that is important for me, that I can see something is developing. That also goes for people. I'm very keen on seeing that an individual person in my team is having a development plan, so that you can move from the level that you are at to something else. And it could be, it could be technical skills that you want to develop. It could also be that you want to go from being a senior auditor to a manager or something else. Or it could be that you want to develop from being an auditor in our function to become to have another job position in the bank outside of our function, and then that we can help you getting there. So that is fun, I think, for me. What is less fun is that I really would understand, what is it that, how do we celebrate better all the good stuff that we're doing? So if you are a salesperson, you celebrate when you get a big new contract, right? You ring the bell, yes, we got it. In an internal audit function, it's, we do all reports, we raise findings or report findings, and we don't celebrate the number of findings, because it's not about, when we've got 100 findings, then yes, that celebrates. So we need to be much better at celebrating. And celebrating could be, yes, we got our audit plan approved for next year by the board of directors. That is a huge achievement, because it takes a long time to produce it. But also we could celebrate, yes, we now actually have delivered 50% of it or the whole plan as was the plan. But I think as the skills that we've got in that area is to be developed, so we need to be better at celebrating.
Yeah, no, that's well said.
Yeah.
And I think it is important, and it's important that we get better at that as well to attract people into the function, because as you say, a lot of people will want that and expect that as well. So it's a very, very good point. A couple of more before we finish up, Dorthe. I mean, if we go back to let's say your university days again, or when it all started off, are you where you thought you would be today? Is it something you thought you aimed for then, or was it more a winding river to get to where you are now?
Honestly, I didn't have a clue when I was at the university where I was going to be. I was no, I didn't. I was very much focused on having my master's degree, and then I think that only during the last 1 or 2 years I started to figuring out, okay, what is it? What kind of direction is it that you want to go in? I was also very busy on doing other stuff when I was studying. So I was playing a lot of badminton. I was a coach for other people in badminton, and I got my own family. I got my first child when I was studying, and I also had a part-time job. So if there should be one advice, I was very busy, and I didn't manage it. But if there was one advice I would give to students today, would be calm down a little bit. So if I should do it again, I would focus 100% on studying and enjoying that university life, and already at that point of time establishing a network which I could then leverage on later on. So relatively late in my career, I have understood the importance of having a strong network, which I have then obviously started to focus on and work on. But I could have started early on. That would have been good, in my view.
That's great advice. Yeah, that's great advice. And is there anything else when you look back over your career? Is there anything else you would have done differently that stands out, and at a point in time you go, yeah, I might have done something differently there?
No, not really. I think I'm relatively good at when having made a decision, a big decision. I never look back. I I made that decision. This is the direction I go in. So I don't regret for some reason. I think I'm good at just sticking to, okay, I made the choice, I'll go that way, and don't think about, okay, shouldn't have done it or whatever. And sometimes there are external factors that you can't manage, like the one when I got a job at Arthur Andersen in August, and in November, 3 months later, I got an email which then meant that a few months later, Arthur Andersen didn't exist any longer in Denmark, and across the world. That was bad timing, but I couldn't have done anything about it anyways. And I'd also say that even though it was a short period at Arthur Andersen, I did learn a lot. Because the culture was quite different, so it was something that I could take with me. But actually, there is one lessons learned. It's not something that I regret, but something that I've learned and used afterwards. And that was during my time at Arthur Andersen in this transition from being Arthur Andersen to in Denmark being Deloitte. I felt that I was in a situation where I was not able to act. I was only able to react to what others decided on my behalf. And that I didn't like. It was not good for me. I'm much better when I can plan for myself, set my own direction, and impact, and do impact. So that was a difficult time. But it was good for me to become aware, because then I could also be much more outspoken about it.
Yeah, and it just underlines the point that every experience, while at the time, it can seem, the end of the world sort of feeling, that it will always stand to you in the long run, because you learn a lot from the difficult experiences. And it was something that Ronan Noonan said on the first podcast again. And I like the attitude, once you've made a decision, you can't change it. And, no matter what that outcome is post that, it's all going to be an experience one way or the other, maybe a bad one, but you'll learn a lot from the bad ones just as much as you'll learn from the good ones as well. Last question, and you've answered it, but I just want to see if there's any more. I finish the podcast usually by saying, if you could meet your younger self, what advice would you give? So you've already said you tell yourself maybe to calm down. Is there anything else that you would say to your younger self over a coffee tomorrow if you could meet her?
Yeah, probably one more thing, and that would be go abroad. Go to another country, another continent, perhaps get experiences. Don't be afraid of leaving your country and your family, because it's easy to go from one country to another today, and you can always come back. So would I have done that in my younger days? Definitely. Yeah,
great advice. Dorthe, thank you very, very much. As I've said, you've been a great mentor to me down through the years. You've always been available to give me great advice, and I thank you very much for that. And I thank you today as well for taking the time. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Brendan. Good to see you.
Likewise. Cheers, everybody. Thank you.